The fight started at my sister's engagement party in front of nearly 50 people, and it wasn't supposed to be about me. But in a family like mine, nothing stays quiet for long. One careless comment set the whole room on fire. We were clinking glasses, smiling for pictures, when my uncle raised his champagne and said loudly, "Let's just hope this marriage lasts longer than your sister's did." He was pointing at me. The entire room froze. My cheeks burned as every head turned in my direction. My divorce was something I'd kept private, painful, and raw. And in an instant, my uncle had ripped it open like a wound I hadn't healed from. I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "Really, uncle, tonight isn't about me." My voice wavered, but I forced a smile. But he didn't stop. He leaned back in his chair, smirk tugging at his lips. "I'm just saying, maybe she should give some advice on how not to ruin a marriage. God knows she's an expert now." Gasps filled the room. My sister's smile faltered, my mother stiffened, and my father's hand tightened around his glass so hard I thought it might shatter. I could feel the judgmental stares, the whispers rising like smoke, and something inside me snapped. I stood up so fast my chair nearly toppled. My hands shook as I slammed them against the table. "You think my divorce is a joke? You think it's funny to humiliate me in front of everyone?" My voice was sharp, trembling with fury. My uncle smirked wider. "I think the truth stings, doesn't it?" The room erupted. My aunt trying to calm him, my cousins whispering, my sister pleading for me to sit down. But I couldn't. The years of shame, of whispered comments behind my back, of carrying the blame for something that broke me, it all boiled over. "You don't know a damn thing about my marriage," I shouted, my voice echoing across the hall. "But since you brought it up, maybe it's time everyone here knows the truth." The room went silent. Forks stopped midair. Champagne glasses hovered just short of lips. My uncle's smirk faltered for the first time as he leaned back in his chair, clearly not expecting me to fight back. I took a deep breath, my voice shaking but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You want to talk about my divorce? Fine. Let's talk about why it happened. My husband didn't leave me because I was a bad wife. He left because he was cheating with someone in this family." A collective gasp tore through the room. My sister's hand flew to her mouth, my cousin dropped his glass, and suddenly 50 pairs of eyes were darting around the room like they could solve the puzzle themselves. My uncle's face drained of color. He sat up straighter, his smirk completely gone, and in that moment the silence was more powerful than any scream. My mother whispered, "Oh my God," but no one else spoke. They were waiting for me to finish, for the name I had held back for years. My throat tightened, my palms sweating, but I wasn't going to let him win. It wasn't just some stranger. It wasn't a coworker. It was his mistress, your daughter. I spat, my eyes locked on my uncle. The room exploded. My aunt shot to her feet, shaking her head violently. "You're lying, how dare you?" But I didn't flinch. I held her gaze, every ounce of pain I'd carried for years burning through me now like fire. My uncle's face was crimson, his fists clenched on the table, but his silence said more than words ever could. The truth was out and he couldn't hide it anymore. Chaos erupted. My aunt screamed at me, accusing me of trying to destroy their family out of spite. My cousins argued among themselves, demanding to know if it was true. My sister burst into tears, begging everyone to stop fighting at her engagement party. But I couldn't stop. Years of humiliation, whispers, and judgment poured out of me in raw, unfiltered anger. Do you have any idea what it feels like to watch your marriage crumble while the people who should have had your back just laughed behind your back? Do you know what it's like to see your husband walk away with someone you trusted, someone who sat at this same damn table? The room fell into chaos, shouts, accusations, sobs. And through it all my uncle sat rigid, his face twisted in rage, but he didn't deny a single word. And in that silence, the truth spoke louder than anything else. The sound of voices clashing echoed through the hall. My aunt was screaming that I was jealous and bitter, while my cousins demanded answers from their father. My sister clung to her fiancé, sobbing, begging everyone to remember this was supposed to be her night. But no one was listening anymore. The engagement party was over the second the truth hit the air, and I wasn't finished. I turned back to my uncle, my voice low but slicing like glass. You knew what your daughter did to me. You knew and you kept quiet. You sat there laughing while I was humiliated, while my marriage crumbled, while people whispered about me like I was the failure. And now you want to humiliate me again. In front of everyone. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He just stared at me, jaw tight, sweat glistening at his temple, and the silence was an admission all its own. Finally, my cousin, the one who had been my husband's mistress, spoke. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she stood. I didn't mean for it to happen, she stammered, her eyes darting between me and her father. It was a mistake. We were drunk and it just happened. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My aunt's face went white, then red with fury as she turned on her daughter. How could you? How could you do this to family? But I wasn't moved by her tears or excuses. My voice shook as I said, a mistake is forgetting to call someone back. A mistake is burning dinner. You don't accidentally sleep with your cousin's husband for months. Her knees buckled and she sank back into her chair, sobbing. But it was too late. The damage was done. By now, half the guests had their phones out, some recording, others texting furiously. The engagement party had turned into a scandal circus, and I was right at the center of it. My sister screamed, slamming her hand on the table. "Stop it, just stop it. This is supposed to be about me and Michael." Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her cheeks. But my uncle snapped at her, his rage finally breaking through. "Your sister ruined her own marriage, and now she's trying to ruin mine." That was it, the final straw. I pointed at him, shaking with fury. "No, you ruined mine the second you covered for your daughter, and now everyone knows. You can't hide it anymore." The hall was chaos, shouts, tears, people storming out, and for the first time in years I felt the weight of my silence lift off my shoulders. The party was in ruins. Decorations that had taken weeks to plan were overshadowed by screaming voices and overturned glasses. My sister's fiancé stood frozen, unsure whether to comfort her or drag her out of the mess that had swallowed her celebration whole. But I couldn't stop now. My uncle had pushed me too far, and years of bottled-up pain were spilling out. "You want to paint me as the failure of this family," I shouted, my voice raw. "You want everyone to laugh at me while you sit on your high horse. Well, tell them how you looked me in the eye and told me to move on when I begged for answers. Tell them how you protected your daughter while I lost everything." The room went deathly quiet again. My uncle's face twisted, his fists clenched on the table. He looked like he wanted to lunge at me, but the weight of 50 eyes held him in place. For the first time, it was him under the spotlight, and he hated it. My aunt turned on him next, her voice shrill with betrayal. "You knew. You knew what she did, and you never told me." Tears streamed down her face, her mascara running in black streaks. She shoved him hard in the chest. "How could you protect her? How could you keep this from me?" My uncle grabbed her wrist, his face red. "Because I was trying to protect this family. You think I wanted everyone to know what kind of shame our daughter brought on us. You think I wanted to watch her destroy everything." But his words backfired. The crowd gasped, some shaking their heads, others whispering. He hadn't defended me. He had only admitted what I'd said was true, and now he looked like the liar. My cousin, the one who had wrecked my marriage, covered her face and sobbed into her hands. "I'm sorry," she wailed. "I didn't want anyone to find out." But I felt no sympathy. I stood taller, my voice shaking but steady. "You weren't sorry when you snuck around behind my back. You weren't sorry when you looked me in the eye at family dinners, knowing what you were doing. You're only sorry now because the truth is out." Her sobs filled the room. My aunt screamed at my uncle, and my sister collapsed into her fiancé's arms. What had started as her perfect engagement party had become the ugliest family scandal we'd ever lived through. And all of it, every secret, every betrayal, was now out in the open. The tension in the room was unbearable. Guests began to leave in clusters, whispering furiously as they grabbed their coats, but most stayed, too captivated by the implosion unfolding in front of them. It felt less like a party and more like a courtroom, and I was finally allowed to testify. My father, who had been silent the entire night, finally stood. His face was pale, his jaw clenched tight. "Enough," he said, his voice low but commanding. "This family has lived on secrets for too long." Everyone froze. My father was the type of man who never raised his voice, who rarely got involved in fights. But when he did, it was final. "Your uncle has disgraced this family by covering up the truth. And you," he turned to my cousin, who was still sobbing, "you have destroyed your cousin's life without a shred of remorse." I felt my throat tighten. For years I thought my parents blamed me for the divorce. Hearing my father finally stand on my side nearly brought me to tears, but my uncle couldn't let it go. He stood up, pointing his finger directly at me, his face twisted with rage. "You think you're innocent in all this. You couldn't keep your own husband happy, and now you want to drag my daughter's name through the mud because of your failures." The words sliced through me, but before I could reply, my father stepped between us. His voice was sharp as steel. "Do not speak to my daughter that way." The room went silent. My uncle sneered, but his bravado was fading. He looked around, expecting support, but all he found were disgusted stares and shaking heads. The people who had once laughed at his jokes now saw him for what he was, a bitter man protecting lies. For the first time he looked small. My sister's fiancé finally spoke, his voice breaking the tense silence. "This is insane. We invited everyone here to celebrate love, and all I see is hate." He looked at my sister, then at me. "I don't even know if this family is something I want to marry into." That sentence hit like a gunshot. My sister sobbed harder, clutching his arm, begging him not to give up on her because of the chaos. But the damage was already done. Her engagement party was no longer about her love story, but about the fractures ripping our family apart. I felt a pang of guilt, but only for her. The rest of them. They had earned every second of this collapse. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one being whispered about. I wasn't the scapegoat. I was the one who finally told the truth. And as painful as it was, it felt liberating. By now, the hall looked like a battlefield. Half-eaten plates were abandoned, spilled wine stained the white tablecloths, and the decorations my sister had so carefully chosen hung limp, forgotten. The air was heavy with anger, betrayal, and tears. My uncle, red-faced and shaking, slammed his fist against the table. "You think you've ruined me tonight. You think you've embarrassed me. This family was already falling apart long before you opened your mouth." My mother, who had been silently holding her composure, finally erupted. "No. You broke this family the moment you decided lies were better than honesty. You humiliated your wife. You let your daughter destroy her cousin's marriage. And now you dare to blame anyone but yourself." Her voice was fierce, trembling with fury. It was the first time I had ever seen her so raw, so unapologetically protective. And for the first time, my uncle looked cornered. My aunt sat back down, her mascara smeared, her eyes hollow. "Is it true?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. She looked at her husband like he was a stranger. "Did you know all this time? Did you protect her while I walked around this family clueless like a fool?" My uncle avoided her eyes, his jaw locked, but his silence screamed louder than any confession. My aunt broke into sobs, shaking her head violently. "You're disgusting," she spat at him. "Both of you." She turned toward me, her eyes filled with tears, but also with something new, maybe shame, maybe regret. "I should have defended you. I should have asked questions. I didn't want to see it. And now," her voice trailed off and she buried her face in her hands. For a moment I almost felt pity. But then I remembered every cruel whisper, every dismissive glance, every moment I was left to drown alone. The guests who hadn't already left stood frozen, like they were watching a train wreck they couldn't look away from. My sister's fiancé tried to guide her toward the door, but she pulled back, refusing to leave until she knew where they stood. "I can't marry into this," he said firmly, his voice steady. "Not until you decide whether you're going to keep pretending this family is normal or if you're going to face the truth." My sister collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. She looked at me with a mixture of pain and resentment, as if I had personally stolen her night away. And maybe I had, but the truth had been waiting for years. It was never going to stay buried. And now, in one night, every dirty secret was exposed, every mask torn off. There was no going back. The hall was nearly empty now, only close family and a few stunned friends remaining. The music had stopped long ago, leaving only the sound of quiet sobs and heavy breathing. My uncle sat hunched over, his hands gripping the edge of the table, his once commanding presence reduced to a bitter shell. I stood tall, though my chest felt heavy. "I never wanted this," I said softly, but the words carried through the silence. "All I wanted was to heal, to move on, but you wouldn't let me. You turned my pain into your joke, and now everyone sees the truth." My cousin, still trembling, whispered, "I'm sorry," again, her voice breaking. But it was hollow now. Sorry couldn't rebuild the pieces of the life she had helped destroy. Sorry couldn't erase the nights I spent alone, the years of carrying shame that wasn't mine. And for once, I didn't respond. I just let the silence hang, because silence was stronger than any words left unsaid. Finally, I picked up my coat, sliding it over my shoulders as everyone watched. My sister looked shattered, her engagement night reduced to ashes. My aunt sobbed quietly, rocking in her chair. My father's hand brushed mine gently, a silent show of support, while my mother stood tall beside me, her eyes unflinching. As I reached the door, I turned one last time. This family has lived off lies for too long. Tonight they died. What happens next is on you. With that, I walked out. The cold night air hit my face like freedom. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not happy, not whole, but free. The chains of secrets, of judgment, of humiliation were gone. Behind me, my family's voices rose again. Anger, pain, denial. But I didn't look back. I couldn't. Because this time, the story wasn't about what they did to me. It was about how I finally took my voice back.